The 2 months following Sukkot move us into the dead of winter. It's the coldest, darkest moment of the year. And just at the blackest moment comes Chanuka, the festival of lights. A warm fire feels great on a cold night. And Hanukkah's kind of like that. It brings us warmth and light from a time that was very dark and cold for our people. Hanukkah's more than an exciting story. It has important things to say to us today, with maybe even a few surprises. Chanukkah is first of all a celebration of freedom, freedom of religion. It shows us that a few brave people who believe in themselves can beat a much larger number. And even if they are defeated, they can still come back to win. Finally, it tells us to stand up and be proud to be Jews.
I think Hanukkah really is about religious freedom, and that it's significant that we think about it that way, and that we study the story and what it is trying to convey, rather than putting the emphasis on the commercial aspect and presence.
I think about Israel during Hanukkah. Almost always they're outnumbered so badly you can't see how they'll win. But somehow they do.
I'm a single parent, and sometimes I get down on myself feeling I haven't done enough for my son. But Hanukkah tells me I can fail and feel wiped out and still pick myself up and come back on top.
Sometimes it's hard to be different. You know, kids want to be like their friends. Hanukkah reminds us that it's great to be a Jew, even if you're the only one on the block.
You know, Hanukkah is the only one of our holidays whose date in the past is clearly known. It takes us back about 2,150 years to a time when the whole Western world admired and imitated the brilliant Greek culture. In fact, Judaism might well have died out about then. And it wasn't because of some mean king or something like that. We were doing it all by ourselves.
You mean people didn't want to be Jewish anymore?
Well, let me ask you something. To a young person, what's more interesting? Something new and exciting and a little outside the rules, or something old and kind of dull?
Are you kidding?
Well, if you lived at the time of our story, you'd be fascinated by the new styles in clothes, the new ideas, the new shows, and the new gymnasium in Jerusalem. Even young priests from the temple were working out inside. "Joshua, what are you doing dressed like a Greek?" an angry father might say. "Oh, you don't know anything about it," the son might say. "All the young people want to be like this. I'm going in there as soon as I'm old enough. And don't call me Joshua. My name is, Jason." You see, many Jews changed their names and style of dress. Some even stopped keeping Shabbat and living as Jews. In those days, to be modern was to be like the Greeks. And also, if you wanted to get rich or be powerful, you had to get along with the powerful Greeks who controlled the country. And the most powerful of them was Antiochus, who ruled a huge kingdom which his grandfather had helped conquer. He not only ruled Judea, but Syria and Babylon as well. The Jews were very different from the Syrians and the Babylonians. This gave Antiochus a tough problem. Egypt was at war with him. They might invade Judea at any moment. "My own subjects will help the Egyptians," Antiochus feared. "They're all different from us Greeks. The Babylonians have one god, the Syrians another. The Jews, well, they have some invisible god in the sky." So he gave an order to his generals. "All these different people must be made to worship our gods, think like us, even eat like us. Then they will fight with us against the Egyptians." Now remember, many Jews admired the Greeks so much that they already wanted to be just like them. Only some Jews held on to the old traditions. But even if most of the Jews were on his side, Antiochus was still not satisfied. He wanted everybody to be just like him. He was the first of what we now call totalitarian rulers, rulers who want total control. They can't stand for anybody to be different. Antiochus put up an idol, a statue of the Greek god Zeus, in our holy temple. And while he was at it, he stole all our precious gold and silver to help pay for his war. Soldiers went to every village to make Jews into Greeks. They would make an example of the village leader. Now, in the village of Modi'in, the leader was called Mattathias. "Mattathias," said the officer, Come and offer a sacrifice to our great god Zeus. Prove you are loyal to your king, and we will give you rich gold and silver, and the king will remember you." Until this day, the different peoples in the kingdom had all been allowed to follow their own religions. So Mattathias answered, "But even if all the others give up the religions of their fathers, my sons and I will do only what God has told us." The promise of gold and silver was too much for one villager. "I'll do it," he offered. With a mighty cry, Mattathias killed the traitor and smashed the altar. "Whoever is for the Lord, follow me," he called, and he led a few loyal Jews into the mountains. Antiochus's army came to wipe us out, but we fought back with stones and farm tools. We were in our own mountains, and our banner said, "Michamocha ba'elim adoshem," which means, "Who is like you among the gods, O Lord?" The first letters of the Hebrew words are Mem, Kaf, Bet, and Yud, which when put together spell out the word Maccabee. And so our army came to be called the Maccabees. Also, Maccabee comes from the word for hammer in Hebrew. Now, the Maccabees lost some early battles because they wouldn't fight on Shabbat. But Mattathias decided that protecting their lives came first, even before Shabbat. So then they won some battles. But then Antiochus sent this huge army to crush them forever. Judah, the son of Mattathias, became our leader after his father died. "We fight for our lives and for our Torah," he cried. The elephants could trample our men to death. Eleazar, Judah's brother, killed the fiercest elephant. Eleazar gave up his own life, and his bravery inspired the Maccabees to their greatest victory. Antiochus's army wanted no part of the fierce Jews. They ran away and didn't come back again. After they drove the enemy army away, Judah and his men destroyed the Greek idol, planted new trees, and fixed up the temple. Finally, Judah was ready for a very special ceremony called a dedication, a ceremony showing that the temple was once again clean and holy. The Hebrew word for dedication is Chanuka.
The Hanukkah of the Maccabees went on for 8 days.
What about the miracle of oil?
Well, why don't you tell us about it?
They looked for a jar of oil, but they could only find a little jar that was enough for 1 day. But a miracle happened, and it kept on burning for the whole 8 days.
Well, we don't know if that really happened, but the rabbis told us that story to remind us of the real miracle of Hanukkah. What do you think that was? Well, the Maccabees were not soldiers. They were farmers, and yet they defeated a tough army with many more men. How could they do that? The miracle was their faith and courage, and we should remember that whenever we feel hopeless.
Let's light the candles.
Good idea.
Any candle holder is a menorah, but the Hanukkah menorah has a name of its own. It's called a Chanukia.
The candles are put in from the right like Hebrew's written.
Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Amen.
We try to keep the present business under control. One night we give a big present, and then the others we give little presents. We let them pick which night they get the big one. And it's okay if you don't make too big a deal out of it.
Well, Hanukkah, as a child, all I remember was my grandfather giving me Hanukkah gelt. And it usually consisted of a silver dollar at Hanukkah. And we lit the candles. But that was it. Today, it seems to me that Hanukkah has been overly commercialized.
We put some money in our charity or tzedakah box before every Shabbat. This year we saved $35. Then one night during Hanukkah, instead of giving presents, we count the money and decide who to give it to.
Every year our kids write on the dreidel box anything they want to say. That way, we emphasize our family and our life together instead of just the presents.
Kimmel, I get it all! The game's really easy. You take turns spinning, and before you spin, each person puts a piece of candy or a coin or whatever you're using into the pot. If you get a nun, nothing happens. If you get a gimel, you win the whole pile. If you get a hay, you get half. If you get a sheen, you put in half of what you got. The letters go nun, gimel, hay, sheen. My Hebrew school teacher says that they stand for Hebrew words, Nes Gadol Haya Sham, which means a great miracle happened there.
Hanukkah has become a very important holiday in our country, and I think we all know why. It's because of the overwhelming presence of a certain Christian holiday at this time of year.
You know, we found that celebrating all of the Jewish holidays takes a lot of the emphasis off of Hanukkah.
Coming from an Orthodox family, it was, the whole aspect of Christmas was very tough for me to take, very tough for me to identify with, and not being able to identify with it. So that any of the glow and the delight and the beauty of Hanukkah were vastly pleasing to me.
And we tell Elizabeth and David that we understand how they feel about Christian holidays. Many of the Jews at the time of the first Hanukkah admired Greek customs, just as we admire the customs of other people. But the Maccabees knew they were Jews and were proud of it, and they chose to live and die that way. We try to follow their example. How about a song?
Ooh, good, let's sing.
Oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago.